Hello and welcome to the Moms Who Know podcast. I'm your host, Chanel Nielsen, and I am thrilled about our guest today, John Payne. Let me tell you a little bit about him. And first, let's welcome you to the show, Kim. Thanks for being here.
Oh, it's lovely to be invited. Thanks, Shannon.
Yes, well, John Payne is an Australian who has worked throughout the world as a counselor, consultant researcher, and educator of both children and adults. And he has been helping children, adolescents, and families explore all kinds of issues that we deal with as mothers. Things like sibling rivalry, difficulties with classmates, attention and behavioral issues at home and school, emotional issues, addiction, self-esteem. I know him, and you might know him as the author of Simplicity Parenting, which he wrote with Lisa Ross. This, to me, is just a landmark book that, for me, has really influenced my parenting so much. And the first time I read it, and I read it several times, the first time I read it, I just kept saying, yes, this is what I need. And this is how I want to raise my family. And so I'm so excited to talk to you today and to learn more from you, because reading your book, I think that it's what we need. It's what we all need right now, this idea of simplicity parenting. So to start with, tell us a little bit about what you mean by the general definition. What is simplicity parenting?
I guess the essence of simplicity parenting is to value connection with our kids over stuff, over scheduling. It's to value our time together, and it's a way in which to go about really carving out the space that we need to be close with our kids, to allow them time to decompress, because life has got so busy. It's almost like the new normal now, the supersized, fast-paced family life has become so ubiquitous that it's been up until recently hard to notice, but many parents have got this feeling now that something's wrong, something's off base. We didn't have to cope with nearly the pace of things that our kids do. And so simplicity parenting is a way in which we can frame our lives up that creates space and grace for childhood.
I love that definition. I love the idea of creating space, of putting value on the connection. And I think that you mentioned, in this day and age, I think that now younger parents, have grown up in their entire life, even as kids, having this overwhelm, too much stuff, too much technology. And so now we're seeing kind of this second generation of parents, the first generation of parents in that space, but this second generation of kids, and it's changing everything. So you mentioned, we don't know kind of what to do. And I think that's so true. We have this feeling of overwhelm. And so I love the idea that simplicity parenting focuses on space and connection. And I wrote down actually a quote that really stood out to me as I was preparing for this. And it says, to have moments of calm, this is a quote from your book, from Simplicity Parenting, to have moments of calm, creative or restful, is a form of deep sustenance for human beings of all ages. Relationships are often built in these pauses, in the incidental moments when nothing much is going on. And that's what I hear you saying about what simplicity parenting is. It's allowing spaces.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Because the fast pace of life has, as I mentioned, is the new normal. It really does require, in a sense, a parent to listen to their instincts, listen to that gut instinct. That, because we all know it. We all had these beautiful moments as kids where we were just given time, where we were just hanging out, where we were allowed to have that space. And frankly, also allowed to be bored. It wasn't our parents' responsibility to edutain us, and because out of boredom comes creativity. And the creativity and innovation and adaptability are crucial for a child's success at school, but they're also very, very important building blocks for future success in college and future employment.
Yeah, I have learned so much from that concept from you about the gift of boredom, giving our children the gift of boredom. It's so easy not to see it that way. We can see our kids, Mom, I'm bored, and then we start to panic almost like, oh my gosh, I need to give you something. I need to solve this problem for you. You talk about boredom in a different way. So when kids come to their parents and say, I'm bored, what do you recommend? How do we give them that gift?
If a kid comes and says, Mum, there's nothing to do, and the little one pokes her head around the corner and says, yeah, there's nothing to do. My response to that is, oh dear. That's it, by the way. Just, oh, oh. And then because we have to kind of outbore the boredom. We have to be the most boring thing in the room. And if we can be really, really boring, then off they'll go. And usually 20 to 30 minutes later, real creativity breaks out. And it's that kind of creativity that has projects started that can go on for hours, days, sometimes even spans weeks for older kids. And whereas if we give in to the temptation to turn the screen on, then the boredom will be relieved for only the amount of time the screen is on. Turn the screen off and the boredom returns. And it's a very short-term, low-yield investment in that sense. And we forget that watching a screen, even though there could be some creative stuff on television, iPad, or whatever, it's actually someone else's creativity. It's not our kids' creativity.
Yes.
It's someone else's that they're passively consuming. So they finish passively consuming someone else's creativity, which is often hyped. It's often at a higher level than what they can achieve. They feel they can achieve themselves. And then the boredom returns, but it returns with a greater ferocity. And so to resist the temptation to put the screen on, to give the iPad, turn the television on, you very, very often will have hours and hours of really deep creative play. And the beauty of creative play is that it helps kids detox. It helps them decompress. It helps them digest the world, all the things that they've had to absorb. Like the average American 12-year-old at the moment is subjected to about 1,200 advertisements a day.
Wow.
Now, even if our kids have 200, it's still a lot of stuff, and there's still a lot of things going on at school, and a lot of running around. And that deep creative play, which arises from boredom, helps them. It's almost like digest or like empty that beautiful little cup of their being, of their soul, ready for the next day to be filled. Because for me, there's a choice. There's basically a choice of, do we see childhood as an enrichment opportunity where we've got to get as much as possible, or do we see it as an unfolding experience? And it's almost like a choice between the two.
Yeah, that's such a good thought. And it's not something we think of often because I think in our culture, we're taught the other way. We're taught, give them everything, give them these opportunities, let them do these activities. Now's the time, now. And this concept, I love what you said about letting them empty the cup and refill it for the next day so that they can refill it for the next day. I think that that's a really powerful analogy and thought because, we talk about being overwhelmed, but that's we can visualize that. Our kids are overwhelmed because they're not getting that chance to empty it out, to process it, to be with it, sit with whatever happened that day. They can't handle more because they never processed what happened the day before if we're not giving them that space to do so. So that's good stuff. I love that. And I also back to what you were saying about boredom, I just love outbore the boredom. I think that is that's going to be a new goal for me, to be the most boring thing in the room with my kids, because if we could do that, that just opens the door for so much for them. That is amazing to me, to be able, and I've seen it with my own kids. When I don't provide the play and they get into the play, it's amazing what happens with kids. Like you said, I mean, for hours they can sit there and play and get into this really deep game, and it's really neat when you step back and see that happen.
Yeah, and that vessel, when it's like the metaphor I think of is that there's a tap, a faucet turned on, and it's great. There's all sorts of things happening in a child's life, many of which are just great, perfectly fine, and that's pouring into this vessel. And then through play, they take the vessel they then pour it onto the soil of their creativity. And but what's happening for a lot of kids is that tap is being turned on too hard, and it's pouring into this vessel. That's point number one. Point number two is that because they're not being given time for creative play, a lot of it, like the average American kid now, watches 7.5 hours of screens a day, right? So they're not being given time to just empty that cup out, and it's just spilling all over the place. And our choice kind of as parents is, do we want to spend our life mopping up the spillage, or do we just want to turn the tap down? Just turn it down, just less stuff coming into the cup, and then more opportunities to empty the cup onto the fertile ground of play.
I love it. And when you hear it that way, well, of course, let's turn down the tap. I think that the hard part as parents comes in is in that what you talked about earlier. There's going to be a space where they say, I'm bored, and you say, oh dear, like you mentioned, you just say that. And then there's a space before they really get into that deep play. And that is the crucial moment for parents, because you want to give in that space, because you're trying to do things and your kids are still, bothering each other or bothering you, and they haven't gotten there yet. And so that's when you say, okay, just turn on the faucet full force. I'll deal with the mess later. And we're not able, if we can't get past that little period of time, then we're not able to have that growth and that expression of our kids' play later. But if we can get through that, if we can, as parents, just make it through that time, then we see the benefits later. So I think that that's a key thing that I hear you saying, is to be willing to ride with it. Now, one thing that you bring out in your book that really helps with this process is simplifying the environment. And talk to us a little bit about what you mean by simplifying a child's environment.
Simplifying the environment is one of the most rewarding steps you can make as a mum or a dad. Just less toys, less books, less clothes, just less stuff, less clutter. For many years, I still have a private practice, but for many years, what I would do is I'd offer people a visit from wake up time to bedtime, or a year of therapy, and what I would see is just this tsunami of toys, and kids wouldn't really know what to play with. And so it was more about acquisition and protection of toys from siblings than it was to do with cooperation and creativity. And the amazing thing is, when you start to cull toys, most of the places that I would visit, very mixed economic backgrounds and so on, it was about 150 to 200 toys per child. And so we would start to just cull the toys, all the broken ones, all the annoying ones, all the ones that came from the unrelenting in-law gifters, just the stuff that. And so we would put that in a bag, and then we would, again, another bag, and then finally we would get down to the toys that the parents knew were keepers, the ones that were dear to them.
Right.
And it was very interesting because I did this for many years, and We have, it's a great number, approaching 1,000 simplicity parenting coaches all around the world. And we hear the same thing, is that the toys, the ones that parents keep are the simple ones, the ones that don't do much, the ones where the child has to actually pour their creativity into the toy. And then just maybe get down to about 20, 30 toys, and then put maybe 10, 15 of them away in a box, and then have 10 or 15 or whatever out in a basket, maybe with a little cloth across the top, and have a toy library so that you cycle some in, you cycle some out. Same with clothes, seasonalized clothes. So it makes it way simpler. Same thing with books. For me, books are precious, but what is rare is precious. And if you
Yes.
have hundreds of books all over the place, the kids tend to turn it into construction material. They're not really valuing the book. And what is rare is precious. So maybe have 3, 4, 5 books out, and then just cycle books in, cycle them out. Just develop your own library of these kinds of things. And that's what we have come to call the first of the 4 pillars of simplicity, is that of simplifying the environment. And it just feels great when you do it.
Yeah, having done it in our own family, I agree. It does feel great. It keeps the house neater. It keeps the kids more engaged. And one thing that I've found, and I'm curious to know if this is true across your practice, but after having done that, and my boys are getting a little older. Well, the 3 middle boys, I have 5 kids. So the 3 middle boys are 12, 9, and 8. And what I've found that they have less toys now is, for one thing, they play outside more. They also find more toys outside. And what I mean by that is they are forever finding sticks and pine cones. My son right now is into building what he calls noodle spears, and he carves spears, and he wraps and he gets noodles out of the cabinet, and he makes other things into toys. So they turn their total environment into toys. So even though we still have a small selection of toys that they can choose from, it's very interesting to me that that's not usually what they go for. They sometimes, they'll still play their Legos. They've got a few things that they come back to, but they have broadened their horizons so much, and what is considered a toy to them is much different than it was. Is that typical, or is that just unique to my boys?
Absolutely typical. Then you've got this kind of ability to take an object and shift and change it. And that, for me, is it a noodle spear?
Yeah, a noodle spear, yes.
Right. That's the beginning of technology. You see, we think of technology as screens and all sorts of stuff. It's not. Technology has a much broader a concept, a much broader construct. And he's now beginning to take an object and shift and change it into something that he needs that tool for. And so there's that piece, which again is myelinating parts of the brain, building up parts of a child's being that are going to be key in his future success in the business world, in the employment world, and so on. The other thing that we've got a lot of feedback from all over the world, so many different cultures, because we have coaches in just many dozens of cultures. The Simplicity Parenting book has been, I think it's been translated into over 30 languages. So wow. The feedback we get is not just Eurocentric or here or in the United States.
Right.
Is that when you simplify the toys and you leave, and it's like you leave the toys where kids can pour themselves into it. It's like one of the most favorite toys, long-lasting toys for my kids when they were little was the box the new refrigerator came in.
Yes.
Right? Because it could be a rocket ship, it could be a store, it could be a car, it could be a cubby house, and so on. But when kids have simple and plain toys and few of them, 2 things that happen from the feedback we've got. cross-culturally, is that number one is that their play gets more creative, of course, but number two, and this is what surprised a lot of parents, is their play becomes they become more collaborative. The kids play better together. And I've often been asked why that is. Now, having a long interest in brain science, the answer is fairly clear, is that when you have to take an object and change it into something else, then you're activating your limbic system in your brain. Now, the limbic system in the brain is also significantly responsible for collaboration and cooperation. So out of creativity comes cooperation and collaboration, and we know that. Like, we're in a really creative flow, and someone is in that, and someone's alongside us. It's so easy to be drawn into that, to a kind of a parallel, and then eventually a really joined creative flow. So a lot of sibling problems start to ease when there's fewer toys and the toys are simpler.
And that's so huge. We don't think about that. I don't think that that's a thing you think of first as a parent. Oh, our kids are fighting, let's give them less. A lot of times I think it's almost the opposite. We think, oh, these guys are fighting, let's give them more. Let's give something to him so they can do their own thing, and they end up with this mountain of toys, overwhelm, stress, instead of this ability, changing their brain patterns and allowing them to come together. So that's really, really cool, especially for those of us with multiple kids who want to see them stop fighting and get along. And this is a path to be able to do that. I want to make sure we talk about something else that I really love in your book, which is the whole idea of rhythm. You use this phrase, predictability, regularity, and they can't read my writing there. Oh, pulse. Pulse. I love that. It almost sounds like poetry. What is rhythm in a family life?
Rhythm is really different to routine. Rhythm is something that we do predictably, regularly with a child, and we do it with them. They come to expect it. They come to enjoy it because they're close to us, and it builds connection. Whereas routine, and many of us experience as kids, is stuff that we had to do, and it wasn't in any way enjoyable, and it kind of disconnected us from our parents and so on, and we're a little resentful of it. There's a major difference between routine and rhythm, and rhythm, it's got to do with a child being able to navigate their day through points of predictability. And little kids, particularly little kids, they don't understand, time so much. It's very fluid. But when they have the same thing, they wake up the same way each morning. The clothes are there ready for them to get. They're put out the evening before. There's a maybe just a little good morning ritual. For my kids, there was just a little funny little song I would sing them in the morning, and they would sing it too. And then they get dressed and they come down, and breakfast is pretty rhythmical. It's pretty much the same. And then the day proceeds. Lunch times. It's often around food, but then there's play time and so on, and all the way through to bedtime and all the little mini rituals that we have. What that's doing for children is it's scaffolding their sense of it's almost like we are. Here is what our family does. This is what we do. And out of the we do comes the I am. The I am emerges later in life. Where I have an 18-year-old daughter just starting college at the moment, and she's being raised in this very predictable, very rhythmical household, and over the years that the rhythm that I needed to provide for her has started to become less, and now she takes it on more, so that she understands rhythm, so that she is doing okay at college. First year of college can be pretty overwhelming, but she's doing okay because she knows how to schedule in rhythms around her homework. She knows how to schedule in rhythms around and put boundaries around her social life as well. And so she's now internalized the rhythm. And rhythm basically helps a child feel secure and safe because they can navigate the day. And it gives them these decompression moments through the day as well. It's hugely important, this giving a child a picture of what's coming, and then it comes true. Because every time you have a little picture of what's coming, like lunch or nap for a little one or whatever it is, and every time they set their little internal clock and it comes true, that means the world is secure, the world is safe, I'm good.
I like that. I love that idea of really wrapping the children in security, predictability, because it is so hard for kids sometimes. I taught preschool for a long time and they don't know what's coming, but I like that idea of providing this scaffolding. You use that word, and I think that's an awesome word because it's not so rigid as a fully built building to where there's it, like you said, routine. We don't necessarily like routine, but this is a loose routine, a rhythm, a flow. And so the kids are able to have some choice within it, but they also have the predictability of knowing what's coming. And that's a wonderful thing for families in general, not even just for kids. I know it helps our family, even my husband and I, to know what's coming and to know what to expect out of the week and what we're going to do on a certain day of the week and kind of how our family flows. It's a good thing.
It makes discipline a lot easier too. It makes guiding children and also rhythm around transitions, because we know transitions are the hot spots. And if the transition is rhythmical, it's done the same way. The children get their coats on, they get dressed to go outside, and it's done pretty predictably, very rhythmically, then it really helps the day just move along and helps a mother or a father feel that they're not having to push everything to have it happen.
Yeah, it's a very nice, calming, it sets kind of a calmer tone for everyone when you know what to expect. Well, we are about out of time. There's just so much good stuff in your book and in your videos. Any final thoughts for people who, as they're listening, are like I was when I was reading your book, just thinking, yes, this really resonates and this is how I want my family to be? Where would you, besides your book, which we will definitely point people towards, where would you recommend people start in their families?
For me, the one of the biggest joys is this simplicity community that we have, whereby people from all around the world, countless numbers of people, connect and can share their questions on an ongoing basis. They can work with each other, parents working with parents. Myself and the Simplicity team are very busy with that. I publish, for example, we just have a little simple Simplicity diary that I record each week of 7 to 10 minutes of some of the really practical ways that one can achieve greater balance in family life. I also do a book reading, and the book was written quite a while ago now. I began work on that in, 2004, 5. So there's been a lot of stories that I've heard, a lot of beautiful stories of triumph and struggle. And so what I do in the Simplicity community is I do the book reading, but then I pause and then build in the stories that I've heard since the publishing of the book. So that's one way that if a parent is listening to this says, I'd really like to make I'd like to make an enduring change, but I want to start simple because it would be ironic to start simplifying
and make it overwhelming. Yes.
Yeah, I mean the irony would be lost on no one, right? And so it's just making that small doable change that feels right in the family, feels organic, feels like it can just flow, and it's achievable. That for me is the key to this, because then as a parent we feel like, oh yeah, okay, that went pretty well, and the result of that was we had a better day today. That was a couple of very nice, happy moments, and then say, okay, what can I take on next? And all right, can can I build more rhythm into the schedule? Or, that was good. Okay, can we not overschedule our kids and maybe pull back a little bit on the scheduling? And then to take on the big one like screens and say, how can we start limiting screens and how can we make sense of that? So small doable changes is I feel the way to walk our talk.
Perfect. I love it. I love the whole idea of start small, start simply. Where can people find your community, or give us a link to your website, and I'll be sure to include that in the notes.
Yeah, the website is just simplicityparenting.com. And then from Simplicity Parenting, you'll be able to access the Simplicity community. There's also a Simplicity Facebook site where, I think it's 20 or 30,000 people are there, and they're regularly exchanging ideas. We regularly post audios, articles there as well at Simplicity Parenting on Facebook. They're the two primary ways.
Perfect. Well, everyone be sure to go check that out. Kim, thank you so much. I think this is wonderful stuff that can really help all families and has definitely helped mine. And everyone, we will see you next time on Moms Who Know.
Good luck with the noodle gun.
Thank you. Subscribe to Moms Who Know so you never miss an episode, and join the conversation on Facebook at facebook.com/Moms Who Know podcast.